In this tutorial, we will create an interactive Excel dashboard. We will work with the data, we will make some changes, we will add some additional columns to make sure we are able to create pivot tables, which we then can copy into our dashboard. I found Superstore sales data at kaggle.com, a link to the dataset in the description to this video, and we will be working with this data. When you have a data, the first step is planning your dashboard. You can draw it on a piece of paper, or you can immediately start adding different figures to your Excel file, trying to think what charts you want to visualize. Maybe for something you will be using tables or pivot tables. For something it will be just a number which stands out, and that's what we will add for our KPIs. Then you think what headers you will have, where would you add slicers, and after that you work backwards and you create pivot charts that can provide you those numbers. And then of course you're working with the original data, adding those helper columns that help you to create the pivot charts you need. You can later use this dashboard as a part of your portfolio project. This is kind of project you can use to showcase that you know how to build dashboards in Excel. When you work with a dataset like this, it is a best practice to convert the data into a table, because in that case it will be easier to add extra columns. You don't need to drag a formula, you can just type a formula in the very first cell and then it automatically fills it in. The very first step, we need to select all our data and then we need to convert it to a table. The shortcut is Ctrl+T. It asks where is the data for your table, and if you have headers or not, we say yes, click OK, and now our data was converted to table. Other option, if you don't want to use the shortcut to create a table, again we are selecting all the data set, we go into insert, and then here next to pivot tables we have our table. We click on it, you get exactly the same pop-up window, you click OK, and it converts your data into a table. Now let's create a new tab which we will be using for our dashboard. We can rename it and call it dashboard. To rename the tab, right click of your mouse, rename, and we call it dashboard. Now we will insert different shapes, and the reason being, one shape will be used where we keep all our slicers, and other shapes will be used to keep our KPI numbers and headers, titles to our file. So you go into insert, here we have shapes, select the shape, I'm selecting this one, then you draw the shape you want, then you can select the color for your shape. Usually the company you work for has brand colors, and you can ask marketing department. They are the people who have a list of all the color codes which the company is using in all their communication, emails, sales campaigns, etc. Many well-known businesses use different shades of blue. Also, if you're not sure, you can use grays. Try to avoid very bright colors, especially red, yellow and green, because in our brains it is associated with the street light. So red always something negative, yellow is a warning, we highlight some problems with yellow, and of course green is a positive. Click here if you want to change a color of your visual. In our case we will keep it as it is, but we will also click here to remove the outline of our visual. And now we will insert another shape which we will be using as a title. If you double click on your shape, you can type, so you can add a title to our visual. For example, we will call it Sales Performance Dashboard, and it is very common practice to indicate the dates you used for your dashboard. In our case, if you look at our order dates are from 2015 to 2018. That's why here in the brackets we will also add years for our dashboard. Now we can increase the font size just by clicking this thing, and of course you can align the title. At the top of my dashboard, I want to have 4 KPI numbers. The first one will be sales, then number of unique customers, number of unique orders, and also what was the average sales per order. We will link this data to slicers, so once you adjust the slicer, the number will change. So for example, if you want to see only for 2015 or 2017, or if you want to see it for a specific state or a city. For that reason, to add those numbers to our dashboard, the first step, we will add placeholders. Again, it will be shapes, so it will be 4 equally shapes, and later we will add numbers inside. You can change the color of the filling, for example, to this light blue. Again, we don't want any outline, and now we can Ctrl C, Ctrl V and copy 4 of them, as we want 4 similar rectangles. I keep my grid lines at the moment so I can align all those boxes, but once we finish our dashboard, I always go to view and I removed grid lines. I think this way dashboards look much prettier. So once I'm finished, I remove grid lines. I know some people prefer to remove grid lines at the very beginning. I do it the opposite way. I still use them to align my boxes. And then we will add headers to our charts. In our data set, we have customers, we have orders, we have different regions. So I decided that after the KPIs, we will add a sales trend. It will be a line chart and a bar chart. The next chart will be regional performance. So it will be a bar chart displaying top 5 regions in sales. Then it will be product insights. So again, what was the top sales in product category and the segment, and then some customer insights. So that's my vision for this dashboard. Of course, you can add more charts and you can also add some pivot tables. It is up to you, but that's what we will be working with. So let's add the header. So we will say sales trend. Then we will make this text much bigger. Now let's select several cells where we want this title to be. We can change the color of those cells. For example, we will use darker blue here. And now you can make an alignment. So there are several ways how you can do it. You can either merge the cells, for example, like this, and then you can't type anything in this cell. Other option, you can align your data. So again, we are selecting all the cells. We go into alignment. Then you click Format Cell Alignment, and here you can select Center across the selection. So what it does, it will center your data, but now you can see different to the merge. You can actually tap on any of those cells and add extra text. For example, if you want to add in USD. It is more flexible than merging your cells together, but of course, over time you decide what's more convenient for you, what you prefer to work with. And let's make the color of our text to white. So here we will have 2 charts. Here we will do regional performance as well as product insights. And now you can just copy your formats. For example, I want this format for my other headers, and in this way we go here, we find this copy the format, and then I select in where I want to have it. I want to have it here, and then also I want to have it here. After regional performance and product insights, I also add customer insights header where I can put my charts, and I extended this little shape where we will add our slicers, and now we are ready to work with the data. As I mentioned before, here I want to have KPIs. I want to have this total sales in a big number. So the next step is to work with the data. We will create several pivot tables, and then we will create pivot charts out of those tables, which we will add here. So the very first step, we need to make some changes to our data, and we will do it step by step. For example, we have just order date and it is in a date format, but I also want to create a year which I will be using for my charts. So we will need to add an extra column. So between C and D, we click and we insert a new column which we call order year, and the formula is very simple. It will be equals year, and then we select our order date, and you see when you work with the table, it's very easy. You type your function, you type your formula in the very first cell, and it is automatically dragged down. The only problem is the format. We need to select the column, right click, format cells, and then we say we need a number, no decimal places because it is a year. Click OK, and now we have our order year. Let's select all this data and create a pivot table. We're selecting the data, click insert pivot table, and we will create it in a new worksheet. So let's click OK, and I will rename this tab as pivot table. So let's also rename train 5 to raw data. Back in my KPMG days, what we also used to do, we would add one tab which was empty. We will rename it like this, and the order of tabs will look like this. You have raw data, which was transformed into pivot tables. You have this tab that is just 2 arrows, and then you have dashboard. You can also change colors of your tab to gray, and for example dashboard, you change a color to green. So that was a style we used at KPMG for our working paper, so people knew that this is raw. It is some additional information, but what you need to work with is, for example, this dashboard. You can make it blue color to align with all our dashboard. Our very first pivot, we need to get total sales. So we need to go into sales and we just add it as a sum of sales. Again, we want to change the format of this because then we will copy this number into our dashboard. Right click, you say number format. Let's go to accounting. We say 0 decimal points and we will add a $sign because it is total sales. The next column I want is the number of unique customers, and this is a problem. So for example, let's add our customer ID here, an account, and you can see the account shows 9,800. Or actually all our rows. It's exactly the number of rows we have. It counts every row instead of counting unique customers. So it is not count distinct. If you work with SQL, you know there is a difference between count, which is every row, and a count distinct. And the problem is there is no count distinct option in pivot tables in Excel. There is some small workaround, but it works on Windows machines. I'm using Mac, so my Excel is even more limited, so I don't have that option. If you're not working with pivot tables, you can use a function called unique, so you use count and then unique, and you can calculate the number of unique customers. But we must add this number as a part of our pivot table because then we want to add slicers to our pivot table. For that reason, we need to go back to our original table and we need to add an extra column, a column that will help us to calculate number of unique customers. Let's go back to our customer ID. We need to insert a new column which we will call customer unique, and then we need to write a formula which will calculate if this customer is unique or not. So we say if, open bracket, in the brackets we say count if, again opening another bracket. Here we need to select the range and criteria. Our range will be G2 to G2, criteria will be G2, then we say equals 1. So if this equals 1, then we say 1, otherwise 0, and before this 2 we need to add a $sign to make it an absolute reference. Since we added this $sign, it means that this G2 doesn't change, so wherever you click it's still the range from this cell to another cell, and you can see that for other cells we are moving our range. So for example, we are here, the formula checks the values from G2 to G16, so it looks at all these values and it checks if there is a G16, so is it there. In case it is there, so it equals 1, then we count it once. If we count it more than once, we say 0, and that allows us to count number of unique users. Let's look, for example, here. Here we are checking only from G2 to G2, so we're looking only at this range. We have this custom ID only once, that's why we say 1. In the next row, we check the values in G2 to G3, so we're looking at this range, checking how many times we see this customer. We see it twice, so it's more than 1. And because of that, we say 0, because we counted this before. And this way we check again and again. And now if you select this column, and you can see that count is 9,801, so it is number of rows, but the sum is 793, so this is the number of unique users. And similarly, we want to find out how many unique orders we have, so we'll add extra column here, insert, we will call it order unique, and it will be exactly the same formula. We can even copy it here, and it will be checking from B2 to B2, same fashion. We checking how many order IDs, if it is unique or not. Let's select the C. We can see that we again have 9,801 rows, but unique is 4,922 because we are summing the values in an order unique. Let's go back to our pivot tables. So we are not using this count of customer ID because it is not a unique customer. If you look at the list of your field names, you can notice we don't have this order unique and a customer unique, which we've just added to our table. We need to go back to pivot table analyze, and here you click refresh or refresh all. It refreshes our data, and now you can see we have this order unique. So we add order unique. We need to add customer unique. This one we don't need. Right click, remove a field. And now I also want to calculate what was the average sale per order. So I want to divide this number by order unique, and of course there is no field name like that. That's why we will add a calculated field. So it is located in, again, Pivot Table Analyze. You click on the field items and sets, and you click calculated field. Here you can change the name. In our case it will be average sales per order, and here you need to select a formula, and our formula will be sales, double click, divided by order unique. This is our average sales per order. Again, right click, number format, we go to counting, two symbols, let's keep our two decimal places, change it here, and for these two also number format. I prefer number, no decimal places, but I like to have a separator for thousands, so let's click that. Okay, and now we have these numbers and we can add them to our dashboard. So how it works, you go here and we need to insert a text. So again, we go to insert. In our shapes we have this text box, and that's what we will be working with. And now you can add a reference. If you click equals, if you go back and click here, it says this get pivot data, and it's showing you an error. So actually you need a reference to a sheet and a cell. In our case it will be A4 in a pivot tables sheet. So here you say equals pivot tables exclamation mark. So it is a name of a sheet, and our cell will be A4. And you can see now it's here. You can make your number bigger. We can remove no fill, so it looks like this. Now we can say, for example, total sales USD. You can change the font, you can make it bigger. Now we have a card for our KPI. We still have outline, so go back and shape format, and you can say no outline. So similarly we copy other things, we copy it to other boxes, and we will do exactly the same for other numbers, but here instead of A4 we have a B4. I will go quickly make these changes. Now we finished with our KPIs. We have all 4 numbers. Of course you can adjust colors and sizes to make it even more presentable. Other thing we want to add is to add slicers to this data. We go back to our pivot tables tab, then we click here into Pivot Table Analyze, and we say insert slices. Now we need to decide which slices we want. I want to have my order year. Remember we added it before, so we add this slicer, make it smaller. We click Ctrl X to cut it. We go back to our dashboard, Ctrl V to add it back, and we place it here. So now what happens if we click it only 2015, for example, you can see all our numbers changed and display only data for 2015. So all 4 numbers changed. 2017 the same. In slices you can select several years, or you can look at all the numbers at the same time. Now we will start adding some charts to our dashboard. So we go back to our pivot tables. What I prefer to do to copy this pivot table, so not to create the pivot table from scratch, paste it again and then make some changes. The next thing we are creating is our sales trend. So all I want is to have a sales, and I also want to have a quarter and a year of those sales. We will add order date as rows. Automatically the pivot table will separate this data and create you years, quarters, months, and order date. I will remove now order date because I don't need it. I also will remove months because all I want to have is years and a quarter. Our quarters are hidden. You can see if you click the plus sign, they are here. You click on a year and you say expand or collapse. We want to expand entire field because we want to have quarters for each of the year. At the moment you can see our pivot table structure that we have a year and then we have a quarter. So you can change it by changing the layout of your pivot table. Again, we're selecting pivot table, right click, and then you go into pivot table options, and here you can change to classic pivot table layout. Click that thing. So again, classic pivot table, click OK, and now you can see we have this year and a quarter. You can see that at the moment we have 2015 only once, but for example you want it in every single line. If you go into design and you have a report layout, for example you want to say repeat all item labels, and now you can see for each row we have a label. When you copy the data, you're creating some tables, Sometimes you want to copy the whole pivot table, and it is easier when you have these labels repeated. You can see we also have subtotals. We don't need them, so we go into subtotals, don't show subtotals. And now we can insert the chart. So I want a line chart which will show us total sales. I will remove this. I will make some little changes just to the header. Control X. Again, we go back to our dashboard, we make changes, and now we have our total sales chart. I also want to add a bar chart indicating total sales for each of the years. So let's go back to our pivot tables. We are copying this pivot, pasted below. We don't want quarters anymore. I just want a year, and I want total sales. And again, we will create a chart. So we go back to insert bar chart, quickly adding it, and remove this label, total sales per year. We click it, Control X to cut our chart, go back, click somewhere to a cell, and now we put it back. We have a trend line, and we have a bar chart indicating total sales per year. Now we want to look at our original performance. I can see now we will not have enough space to add chart. Again, select a couple of rows, click insert, it will just add the space so you can put your chart. For original performance, I want to have a bar chart that indicates sales by top 5 regions. We go to pivot table. Again, we are copying our pivot, paste it. Now here we don't want year, all we want is states. Let's sort our data in descending order based on sum of sales. You can see that we have California, New York, Texas as a top performing states. And now let's select top 5. So you click here, you say filter by value top 10, and then you're selecting how many items you want. I want 5, so here instead of 0 I change it to 5, and then you just close the filters. This is our top 5 states based on sales. Again, as before, we need to add a chart. I will add a bar chart very quickly. I remove header because I have it over there. I remove this, and we put it here. The next one, we will add product insights. So we will select a category and subcategory, and again, total sales based on that. As always, copy, pivot, paste it, remove the filter, so you go back and you say clear filter, remove the state, add category, subcategory, again, total sales. We can maybe sort it from largest to smallest, so in descending, sort by subcategory. And also here, again, you need to select descending in a category. What I personally like to do when you create all these pivot tables, you just very quickly check totals. So for example, here we have 2,261,000, and I go back and I check, okay, this pivot chart was also 2 million, this one 2 million. So you always align and you always check that nothing is filtered out, nothing disappeared, that all numbers align, because of course when you present in dashboard, that's the question you will receive, why numbers don't match if they don't. And you know, it's very difficult to build this trust between you and stakeholders, and it's very easy to break the trust when your numbers don't match and when you present misleading information. So now we check that all our sales matching. Again, we can create a chart, all the same, insert chart. I prefer bar chart for displaying this data as well. Removing legend, removing headers, Control X, and add it to our dashboard. You remember that at the very beginning, when we start working with the very first pivot table, we change sales format. And that's why every time we keep working with our pivot tables, all the numbers already in accounting format, so it has a $sign, which is very convenient. So if you forget to do that, every time you copy your pivot table, it will not have formatting and you have to replicate it, and then it affects the way your chart looks. And the very last bit is a customer insight. For example, we have a different segment and we can display how much sales each of those segments generated for us. So we go back, we copy one of the pivot. Again, we change our state. As you remember, we have filter here, so you need to clear the filter. You need to remove the state. We go back, we find our segment, and we add it as a row. It is just 3 data points, so you can use in that case a pie chart or a donut chart. If you don't like pie charts and donut charts, you can always use a bar chart instead. Here we selected a donut chart. We go back to design, change chart type, and we will change it to a bar chart. Remove our legend and total. We go back, add it here. Probably one thing which is missing is a product. Let's create one more pivot table, and instead of segment, we will add product name, and we will select top 5 sales in terms of a product. So again, top 10. Here we selecting just 5. We will also sort it in descending order based on sum of sales. And the last, a bar chart. If you don't like a bar chart, because of course we have a long names of a product, the other option is to actually create a table and copy it to your dashboard. In that case, it's hard to copy the whole pivot table, and it is recommended to make a copy of a pivot table. And what I mean, you just click, for example, here, and you reference into 8A87, and then here in a similar fashion you just say equals. You clean it up a bit. You have to of course move around a column. You create a table with borders. You change format to accounting, maybe add some coloring to your table like this. So I made some changes to this table. I had to align other charts and make the column J bigger. So of course you can keep playing around to making this dashboard better looking. The last thing we will add is extra slices. At the moment we have only a year, and actually when we click on it, all our charts react, but it's not what I want. For example, with these 2 charts, I don't want to react them on the year slices. We go back to the pivot tables that were used to create that line chart. So go back to pivot table analyze, and then you click on a filter connections, and it shows us that this pivot chart is linked to that slicer, but I don't want them to react. So let's untick this. And similar here, I also filter connection. Let's untick this box. So if you go back now and we click on different things, you can see that it impacts our regional performance, it impacts our customer insights, but it doesn't impact these 2 sales trends because I want them to be for all years available. So this is up to you. You decide how you want those slices interact. For example, we want to be able to also slice by region or by state. So if you go back to pivot table, click here, pivot table analyze, insert slicer, we can add a region. Let's click OK. You adjust the look of it, Ctrl X to cut it out, go back to dashboard, move it back to our panel, and now for example it displays everything, but you can see once we click on the central, it shows changes in sales or sales. So let me see if our regional performance and others are affected by the slicer. No, they are not. So what we need to do, again, we need to go back to our pivot tables, and you have to adjust it manually for each of pivot tables. So you click at this one, pivot table analyze, filter connection, and you say what you want to be affected by this filter. We don't want this data to be affected by anything, but for example, again, by state you don't want, because we selected a top 5 states, but this one you might want to be affected by the slicer. So filter connection, you can see it's connected to order year. You also want it to be connected to the region, and you do it for each and every pivot table. And now if you go back to our dashboard, you can see that once we click region, it affects all of these things, including our final table. So it is up to you to decide how many slices you want based on the requirements from stakeholders, but it is very convenient. It is an interactive dashboard. I think it is in a way a stepping stone to Power BI. It is a very simplified dashboard in Power BI. It can be more complicated data models, more data files. I know some businesses who are successful, but they don't use Power BI. They still use Excel. They report to their board in a similar Excel reports every month, every quarter. It is more commonly used than you think. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time.